The courtroom was filled with a heavy silence. In the defendant's dock sat a woman in military uniform, her hands in cuffs, her gaze direct and cold, not cruel. Her name was Lieutenant Evelyn Rae, the Army's best sniper. Her name was once spoken with pride, but now with accusation. The judge banged his gavel. Lieutenant Rae, you are charged with violating the code of conduct for opening fire without authorization, resulting in a death. How do you plead? Evelyn remained silent. The prosecutor, a young officer, stood up. Your Honor, let me remind the court. The defendant took a shot without an order. Yes, the target was an enemy, but the lieutenant's actions were not sanctioned by command. He paused, looking at the courtroom. The result? A diplomatic scandal, the death of an informant, and a failed operation. The room erupted in whispers. The defense attorney stood. Your Honor, if I may remind you, that informant was a double agent. And if not for Lieutenant Rae's shot, dozens of our soldiers could have died today. The judge looked sternly at Evelyn. Why didn't you wait for the order? She replied quietly but clearly. Because the enemy had no intention of waiting. Approving murmurs were heard in the room, but the judge raised his hand. Silence, the prosecutor continued. Lieutenant Rae, you acted without communication, without target confirmation. You violated a direct order from your commander. This is a breach of discipline and chain of command. Evelyn pressed her lips together. I acted to save my people, but you killed a man who, it turns out, could have been a valuable witness. A witness, she smirked. That witness was holding a detonator. In 30 seconds, the camp would have exploded. The prosecutor was taken aback, but the judge remained unmoved. The court will recess. The defendant will remain in custody. 2 military guards approached and handcuffed her. A heavy silence hung in the room. As Evelyn was led out, someone shouted from the gallery. This is unjust. She's a hero. But the judge merely banged his gavel. Remove the disruptors. Evelyn raised her eyes and suddenly met the gaze of a woman in the front row. It was the mother of one of the soldiers she had saved. Tears streamed down the woman's face. She placed a hand over her heart. Evelyn gave a slight nod. Meanwhile, in the courthouse corridor, a group of officers was discussing the proceedings. They're just making her the scapegoat to cover up a diplomatic mistake. But it's a disgrace. She saved an entire platoon. In politics, there are no heroes. Only scapegoats. No one knew that at that moment, a phone was ringing in Washington. Admiral of the fleet Richard Hayden, a 40-year service veteran, received a message. Sir, the trial of Lieutenant Rae has begun. A verdict is expected today. He frowned. Rae? Is that the one who took out the terrorists from 1,200 meters? Affirmative, sir. And they're court-martialing her? Hayden stood up. Prepare the car. We're going to the courthouse. The courtroom filled again. Everyone awaited the finale. The judge returned to his seat. The prosecutor prepared his final words. Your Honor, he began. In the Army, there is no place for insubordination, no matter how noble the intentions. Violating an order is a crime. I request a sentence of dishonorable discharge and 3 years in a military prison. An uproar. Outraged cries. The defense attorney jumped up. This is unjust. We have evidence that the shot saved lives. But the judge raised his hand. The decision will be made in accordance with the law. Suddenly, the doors swung open. On the threshold stood Admiral Richard Hayden. White uniform, medals, a steel posture. Behind him were 2 naval officers and journalists. Complete silence fell in the room. The judge was taken aback. Who are you? This court is closed. Hayden took a step forward. Admiral of the fleet Hayden. I demand to speak. This is a court, sir. You cannot. I can do anything when one of my soldiers is being tried. The Admiral walked to the defendant's dock and stood next to Evelyn. Remove her cuffs, he said. I don't have the authority. That's an order. The guards exchanged glances and complied. Evelyn rubbed her wrists as she raised her hands with difficulty. Hayden looked at her. Hold fast, Lieutenant. I know who you are. He turned to the judge. Your Honor, you are accusing a soldier of saving a platoon from an explosion. But you didn't even bother to review the operation's materials. The judge looked confusedly at the prosecutor. What materials? The Admiral produced a folder. Here is the intelligence report. That day, the enemy had planted C4 under an ammunition depot. The target Lieutenant Rae shot was not a witness, but a saboteur with a detonator. She had less than 20 seconds to make a decision, and she saved 26 people. A dead silence hung in the room. The prosecutor paled. Well, that report wasn't in the case file. Hayden looked at him coldly. Of course it wasn't. It was lost on its way to the court. Too inconvenient a truth. The judge leafed through the documents, then slowly stood up. The court is in recess. He returned 10 minutes later. In light of the new evidence presented, the court finds Lieutenant Evelyn Rae. He paused. Completely not guilty. The room exploded in applause. People stood up, soldiers' mothers. Journalists rushed forward. Evelyn couldn't believe it. Hayden approached her and said quietly, You did what every officer should do. You saved people. That is an honor, not a crime. She looked at him, barely holding back tears. Thank you, sir. No, he smiled. It is I who should thank you. You reminded us that honor isn't about orders, it's about conscience. As she exited the courthouse, she was met with applause. Journalists shouted, How do you feel after being acquitted? She replied calmly, I'm just a soldier. I did what I had to do. And if I had to, I would do it again. A few months later, Evelyn returned to duty. She trained young snipers, teaching them not just to shoot, but to think before pulling the trigger. On the wall of her academy hung a poster that read, One precise shot can save lives, but a true hero is one who shoots with their heart. Later, at a ceremony in the Pentagon, Admiral Hayden was presenting awards. When it was Evelyn's turn, he said, For courage, resolve, and fidelity to oath, Lieutenant Rae is awarded the Medal of Honor and Courage. The hall rose to its feet. Everyone stood. Sometimes a person must disobey in order to remain true to their duty. Courage is not a weapon. It is the choice to do what is right when everyone else is silent. If you believe that true heroes don't always wear medals, like and share this story.